We're about to begin the services for Mr. Arnold Evan Reingold. If any of you have a cell phone or any other type of noise-making device, please make sure that you turn it to the off position at this time. Officiating our service here today will be Rabbi Alex Friedman and Chazan Jacob Sandler. At the conclusion of our service, the interment will take place at Memorial Park Cemetery in Skokie. All contributions should be made to the Hadassah Medical Organization, 60 Revere Drive, Suite 800 in Northbrook. For those of you who will be going in procession with the family to the cemetery, please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker. The sticker should be placed in the front passenger side windshield. We would also ask that you have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at that time. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags on the tops of many of the vehicles throughout the procession. As we drive in procession today, we please ask you to drive as closely as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times. We want to avoid any large spaces or gaps in the procession, especially as we go through intersections. I'd ask you to please be very diligent about not utilizing your cellular phone at that time. Serving today as pallbearers at the conclusion of the service will be sons Gordon and Al, grandsons Ari, Benjamin, David, Matthew, Joshua, and Richard. Shiva information. Shiva will take place until 6 today and then 7 to 9 this evening. Minyan will be at 7:30. Monday from 3 to 5 and 7 to 9. Minyan will be at 8 p.m. Tuesday to Thursday from 3 to 5 and 7 to 9, 7:30 Minyan. Mask will be required unless you're vaccinated. Begin our service at this time.
On this day, we pay Kavod Acharon, a final honorable farewell to Arnold Reingold, of blessed memory. We begin the service with the recitation of Psalm 121 by Chazan Sandler.
Shir lamalot esa einai el harim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim ba'aretz al yiten lamot raglecha al yalum shomrecha hine lo yanum velo ishan shomer Israel Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilecha ayad yeminecha Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka veyareach balayla Adonai yishmorcha mikora yishmor et nafshecha Adonai yishmor tzitcha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam me'ata ve'ad olam
A song for ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountain. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever. Amen. I now recite the 23rd Psalm in Hebrew, and together we can recite it in English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo achsar, bino desh yarbiseni, al meminuchot dinah haleni, nafshi yeshovev, yanacheni b'ma'aklei tzedek, b'ma'an shemo. Gam ki elech b'gei samavet, lo irara, ki aytai madi, shivtecha u'mishantecha, ehema yenachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, neged soravai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi rivaya, ach tova chesed, yudefuni, kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'beit Adonai, le'orech yamim. If you have the brochure, if you turn to the inside, we see a translation of the 23rd Psalm, which we can recite together in English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Rabbi Schwab is not able to be here physically. He's on the West Coast, but it was important to him to share a message today. And so this note is from our senior rabbi, Michael Schwab. He writes, there is a Jewish tradition that holds that when a wonderful person and dedicated Jew dies, God sheds tears in heaven. Today, there are certainly tears in heaven as we recall with love and deep respect Arnold Reingold. Though I am away on the West Coast, my heart is with you today. I send love and comfort to Hilda and her wonderful family. Arnold was a brilliant man and a dedicated Jew. He was a person who was able to persevere and become successful in so many different ways. It is amazing how much this man knew. And he was also a mensch. And I enjoy speaking with him on Shabbat and at different programs. The world is certainly poorer without him. And I also want to share my appreciation and admiration for Hilda, who was so dedicated to Arnold throughout their lives, and particularly this last difficult period as his health declined. I wish you love and comfort. Yehi Zifro Baruch. May his memory always be for blessing. Let us all say, Amen. In different ways, we all knew him, we all loved him. That's why we're here today. That's why many not here today are tuning on the live stream or thinking about this man today. But the people who knew him best, who loved him the most, and who received the most affection from him was, of course, his family. And to them we give hugs. Before the funeral, after the funeral, Shiva, and beyond. And we think of his wife Hilda, his children Sarah and Jay, Gordon and Al with Kimberly, and his many grandchildren, Ari with Tracy, Karen, Brian, Benjamin, David, Matthew, and Josh, and his two great-grandchildren, Madeline and Ruby. At this time, we'll hear words of reflection and love and memories of hesped, eulogy from those who knew him best, who loved him the most, from his family. I'll first invite Gordon to share his thoughts, followed by Al and the grandchildren.
On Monday afternoon, on Monday afternoon, I was driving to South Bend to pay a condolence call for Harlan Katz, a beloved family friend we have known for over 50 years. My father called and asked me to convey my parents' regrets that they could not be there. It was to be our last conversation. He suffered a fall that night and was taken to Evanston Hospital. For several days, he straddled the border between life and death and succumbed on Thursday. We are mourning our loss while we celebrate his life. And it was a full life, mostly led on his terms. For instance, in his late 20s, he was critically ill and not expected to survive. He rudely ignored the doctor's prognoses and outlived them all. But it was more than living. He made the most of his life. He was very bright and intellectually agile, capturing the highest score in the nation when he took the CPA exam. He had an unquenchable thirst for intellectual pursuits, from an incredible command of history to business, politics, and social causes. His vantage point was unsurpassed, combining a lifetime of experience with youthful enthusiasm. I quoted Winston Churchill 2 years ago when Arnold turned 90. The farther backward you can look, the farther forward you can see. We are fortunate to have had Arnold in our lives for so long. My parents were married for almost 69 years, and I partnered with him in the family practice for close to 38. His life overlapped with Sarah, Al, and my children's generation, and he was an involved, caring, and influential grandfather. A connection with the following generation had begun as well. My father challenged and enriched our minds, often making us laugh in the process. He was intellectually honest and taught us the importance of approaching issues from an objective viewpoint by stepping back and considering differing perspectives. Although my father was an only child, he always embraced my mother's nieces and nephews as his own, and the bond was reciprocal. Richard and Carol are here with us today, and Elliot, Roz, and Ed are saddened and supportive. Today, being July 4th, is an appropriate day for my father's send-off. He was patriotic, served as an officer in the Navy, and genuinely loved his country without losing sight of the problems and challenges. Dad, rest in peace. We love you, we thank you, and we will miss you.
haven't spoken from this podium in 40 years and about 2 weeks. A week after Ron's bar mitzvah and 2 weeks after Guy's. A lot of memories in this room. And a few years after I brought up a couple of rings for my sister and Jay here. A lot of memories in this room. They're redecorated. Okay. In theater, one conveys by doing, by action. The script is a faint shadow. The performance, the action, the well-lit action, creates the scene. In other words, ultimately, it's not about words. It's more about how the limited time is spent in the act of telling a story. My father did not set expectations. I have very strong, palpable memories of my childhood, memories which resonate every time I walk the halls of the house in Highland Park or this building. But I have no memories of my father telling me what to do. He didn't set expectations, he modeled behavior. We never had a conversation about doing the right thing or what to do or what not to do. He never lectured about how to live life. He just went to work every day. Every day. Treated everyone in his circle with respect and dignity. Furthered his own learning and that of those around him. And he immersed himself in cultural activities. He loved the theater, the opera, movies, music. And they went every week. When I was in junior high on Saturday nights before leaving for dinner and a show, he would pick up a pizza for me. And then join me for a slice or two, a couple hours before we went out to dinner. So that even when we didn't have an evening together, we had a meal together. He was almost always home for dinner. Breakfast too. He left very early on Mondays and Thursdays, but the rest of the week he and I often had breakfast together until I left for college. Now he would destroy a perfectly good egg by cracking it into a bowl and microwaving it for about 4 minutes until its state of matter could only be described as thick rubber. And to this day I rarely go near eggs. But we had a nice time together. While we sat together at the kitchen table, there would be small talk. He didn't feel the need to fill a comfortable silence with chit-chat. When there was something to say, he said it. And when a topic came up that merited a lengthy conversation, it was organic and fluid and never forced. Anyone who spent more than 4 minutes around Gordon knows that my brother has a rather dry wit and an unusual sense of humor. I'd say it's unique except for the fact that he trained me from birth to have the same thing. He and I have a very similar bond, a special bond rather, manifested with a banter that never failed to make my father laugh and laugh and laugh. That has been our own unending play, and our father loved to see that play out in real time. And despite the hours he spent at the office, there was no question that his family came first, and that the time he spent working was really for his family. Arnold had an incredible sense of time. Perhaps to some degree because of his illness in his youth, he was so appreciative of living each day to the fullest, and he was so generous with his time and his love. And at his core, he wanted for us only what we wanted for ourselves. His was a selfless, nurturing kind of love, except when playing cards. When an awesome level of competitiveness came out, and he played with a determination and a ferocity that was all about winning. And we played a fairly complicated game called Bariba, card game. We all still play it. And I remember being very happy when I started being able to beat him once in a while. And despite the competitiveness during the game, regardless of who won, he was always happy that we had played together, that we had spent the time together. And this carried through to the next generation, as Gordon said. His favorite pastime became buying presents for the grandchildren. And he would always get on the floor and play with them. And once Sarah set him up with an Amazon account, and he experienced the magic of e-commerce, he started using Amazon intensely to buy the presents for the grandchildren. As I got older, I began to realize that every time I went with him somewhere to work or heard about someone who called or came by his office, or I saw him interact socially in that room over there used to be a wall between the two. It was always the same people, many of whom are here today. The same actors in the play. Nobody ever left his circle. Not the office colleagues, not the clients, not the friends. I grew up thinking that all adults worked together with the same people for decades, if not forever, and that friendships were perennial and one of life's most important pillars. These friendships were so special to him. Many of the people here today, Bob Sclair, Manny Winston, so many others. The conversations ranged politics, art, current events, never accounting, actually, and they were always substantive. This isn't an exaggeration. The guy was incapable of small talk. It wasn't worth the time to him. He knew about time. He knew how he wanted to spend it. It was a relationship he really mastered. When he came home from a day in Indiana, he would lie down in a dark room for about 10 minutes to recharge, and then spend the rest of the evening with the family or immersed in a book. He lived the life he wanted to live. He lived it to the fullest. Today I'm wearing his watch, a watch that was a gift from his children, as we continue to honor and remember a man who gave so much of his time and his love. Thank you.
We now invite forward his grandchildren, Ari, Aaron, Benjamin, David, Matthew, and Josh.
When my cousins told me we'd each be sharing a memory of our grandpa, my first thought was to talk about the evenings in the living room for hours debating about world events, philosophy, economics. I don't think we ever convinced each other of anything because at that point the game would be over and that was no fun. But anyway, I started thinking about it, reflecting more towards my early childhood, and I remembered how we would make these little Pac-Man cardboard things. When I was like 4 or 5 years old, I loved these, yeah, and I had totally forgotten about them for decades up until, 2 days ago. So that's my memory of my grandpa.
My grandpa was so loving and caring. He was always showing interest in my classes, my jobs, and my friends. Even last month, as challenging as it may have been, he made the effort to come spend time with us out by the pool with my friends, always asking how everyone has been and genuinely interested. He always was buying a new pool toy or floaty. He loved seeing us happy and having fun. He also had an amazing bond with my daughter, Maddie, that was so heartwarming to see. The two of them lit up when they saw each other. He was always there for us, no matter how big or small the problem was, and he will be greatly missed.
I think of Grandpa most for his humor. He always had a joke he could tell, and he passed his humor down to his children, who in turn passed it down to us. There was always laughter at family events, and thanks to him, we will continue to have laughter in our family.
When someone was feeling a little too warm at a Passover Seder, but the window in the dining room was closed and stuck, Grandpa stepped out for a minute and came back with a large hammer. When we were eating dinner and someone wanted ketchup, but the bottle wouldn't open, Grandpa pulled out a pair of industrial-grade pliers. He always acted immediately when any of us had a passive request, not to mention when a friend or relative actually needed something. His actions came from a place of deep care for his family and for those around him.
One of my most recent memories of Grandpa was when we were in Florida just a few weeks ago, and he was recovering from surgery, and I volunteered to go out to the store. Grandpa declared that he was coming with, to which I gave a skeptical shrug of affirmation. I drove his car to Publix, following his unfaltering directions, and we walked around the store, collecting the assorted items that we needed. Grandpa, of course, pushed the cart while I walked beside him and marveled as he spotted items well before I did. And after completing our purchases, we got in the car to go home, but instead of directing us back to the condo, Grandpa took us to the Whole Foods across the street. We walked around our second grocery store of the day and collected only 2 items, bread and croissants. When we did return to the condo and Grandma asked how he was doing, he replied, "Oh, you know, a little tired." Grandpa was never one to do things halfway. Even if it meant going to a whole separate store just to get the right bread, he was always happy to do a thorough job. I'm so grateful for this family and this community that he helped to build and that I now get to be a part of. I love you, Grandpa.
It's an ironic story because he probably got the wrong bread anyway, and then went back and got the right bread. We would be remiss not to mention how intelligent our grandpa was. But what do we mean by intelligent? It's true that Grandpa knew countless historical facts and was proficient in mental math, but his intelligence was much deeper than that, and it impacted us all. When I was young, Grandpa and I played lots of games. He bluffed me out of poker hands, fooled me with sneaky chess moves, and drove me crazy with his stubborn and aggressive negotiation in Monopoly. As I caught on to his tricks, he found new ways to outsmart me, only occasionally letting me win. This was not only wonderful bonding time for us, but it taught me to think, and all of us, I think, in ways that school and other people in our lives really didn't. As I grew older, Grandpa and I discussed current events, politics, and society at many, many dinners at his house. While we didn't always agree, I respected and admired the way that Grandpa could contextualize facts and history and see through the ordinary talking points. It seemed like for every new situation that came up, he was prepared with a Churchill quote or an anecdote from ancient history. Sometimes our conversations felt more like a college course, but I didn't mind. He helped to influence the way that I and all of us understand and interact with the world. We will miss Grandpa because he was silly, because he was loving and caring, because he was funny, because he was bold, and because he was wise. In this room are Grandpa's 3 children, us, the 6 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. We'll do our best to carry on his legacy.
Nelson Mandela once said, "A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination." And this is certainly true, an ideal for all of us to aim. But it understates in a major way the man who was Arnold Reingold. Arnold had an incomparable mind. He was a singular search engine, the family Google. And Arnold had a limitless heart, bursting with love for his family and for his community. Arnold's deep curiosity kept his mind razor sharp until very recently. And whether the subject was taxes or world history or the Civil War or almost anything, he was a true scholar. And on any given subject, he was able to explain both the big picture and the nuanced details for both sides of an issue. And perhaps he inherited this intellectual dexterity from his grandfather, who was a Talmud scholar, in which his family takes pride. For Gordon, Arnold modeled the ability to look at issues broadly and to make your own conclusions. For Sarah, he taught her to see both sides of an issue and model respect for the other side, no matter what. And for Al, his father demonstrated how to live as a really decent person. Because as brilliant as Arnold was, he was much more than just his mind. Arnold's heart generated so much love. He simply loved his life, his work, his wife, his family, Highland Park, this very place we are all sitting in. He lived his life on his own terms. He knew how he wanted to live. And against all odds, he overcame significant medical issues for most of his life. And when he loved his family, they loved him right back. As we heard, Gordon and Sarah chose to work for him. And it takes a very special parent for their children to want to work with them. His Bashir was his beloved Hilda, to whom he was married for 68 years. Together, they loved to travel, to attend the opera, the theater, the symphony, the art institute, and to host holiday meals. But what gave him the most joy was being an integral part of their grandchildren's lives. And his kids described him as them, they were a team, Hilda and Arnold, well, the most wonderful, involved, caring grandparents, more so than any of my friends. He rolled on the floor with the little ones, and as they grew older, he treated them as unique people and followed their interests and school involvements. Together they were involved in Jewish life at Bethel, where the family grew up and celebrated milestones. Hilda was so taken by his support for her interests and passions. She had ideas of improving the neighborhood and the children's school experiences, and he was right behind her. Together they pursued social and political causes that they felt were important. And she marveled at his ability to provide a historical context for any work of literature that she read, calling him a Renaissance man. Listening to the stories about Arnold reminded me of 3 quotes from Pirkei Avot, a selection of Talmud that gives life advice. And given that his grandfather excelled in Talmud study, I felt this was an appropriate well of information. Rabbi Hanina Mendoza says, anyone whose good deeds exceed his wisdom is enduring. But anyone whose wisdom exceeds his good deeds, his wisdom is not enduring. With Arnold's brilliance, the bar for wisdom was extremely high, but his good deeds and his character truly exceeded even that mark. Indeed, his wisdom endures. The second quote is from Rabbi Yochanan, who said to his students, go forth and observe which is the right way to which a person should cleave, the right way to live. And 5 students answered. Rabbi Eliezer said, one should have a good eye. Rabbi Joshua said, one should have a good companion. Rabbi Yossi said, one should be a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said, one should have a mind with a gift for foresight. And Rabbi Elazar said, one should have a good heart. The teacher, Rabbi Yochanan, said to them all, I prefer the words of Rabbi Elazar, who says one should have a good heart, because that includes all of your words. A good heart supersedes everything else because it includes everything. And Arnold's heart was filled with love of life, for family, and for Jewish community. And the third teaching, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua said, let the honor of your student be as dear to you as your own, and the honor of your colleague as the reverence for your teacher, and the reverence for your teacher as the reverence of God in heaven. Arnold was the smartest man in the room, but he truly made those of all ages feel respected. And that is exceptional. I was told that many years ago, maybe 50 years ago, Arnold was giving a sermon here, probably in this very spot where I stand. And he noted that in other religions, they worship the king, and they kiss the ring, which symbolizes the king's power. But the Jewish tradition is not so. In Judaism, we worship the Torah, the word which supersedes the king. And the Torah has a crown. And that is to which we pay devotion, not the ring, but the crown of Torah. Indeed, the word exceptional is what comes to my mind when considering his full life today. In this upcoming Shabbat, we read two parshas together, Matot and Maseh, and it records the individual stops along the Israelite journey of 40 years. And we also conclude the fourth book of the Torah, Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. Today in this room, on this sad day, we look back on the individual steps of Arnold's life's journey. And through tears and hugs and sadness, we conclude, we are so grateful to him. We are stronger and wiser because of him. And this matches precisely the words Jews around the world will say this upcoming Shabbat. When the Torah reading concludes with the final words of the fourth book, we say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and strengthen each other. Arnold made each of us better, each of us stronger people. So let us offer strength and support, our full hearts, to each other in Arnold's memory. Yehi Zikro Baruch, may his memory always be a blessing. Amen. At this point, I ask that you please rise if you're able, as Husband Sandra will chant the El Malek Memorial Prayer.
El Malek Rachamim Shochen B'meromim Hametzeh Menucha Nechona כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת אהרון בן אליהו שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים אז תראו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
Amen. El Malek Rachamim, exalt the compassionate God. Grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Aharon ben Eliyahu, Arnold Reingold, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please remain standing as the pallbearers come forward.